I never imagined that my life would fall apart at a time when I needed the most support. I was always a strong, independent man, physically fit, successful in my career, and deeply in love with my wife, Lisa. We had been together for 8 years, married for 5. Our relationship had its ups and downs like any other, but I had always believed we were solid. I thought she was my partner in every sense of the word. But everything changed when I got sick. It started with small things, a nagging fatigue that wouldn't go away, persistent headaches, and an unusual shortness of breath. I shrugged it off as stress from work, thinking a good rest would fix it. Lisa initially seemed concerned, urging me to see a doctor. But between my stubbornness and my belief that I could push through anything, I ignored her advice. Until the day I collapsed. Waking up in a hospital bed was surreal. The sterile smell of disinfectant filled my nose, the beeping machines around me a constant reminder that something was seriously wrong. My doctor, Dr. Reynolds, stood beside me, a concerned look on his face. "You've been pushing your body too hard, Mark," he said in a tone that carried both authority and concern. "Your immune system is compromised. Your tests indicate an autoimmune disorder. Your body is attacking itself. You need rest, and you need support." Support. That word stuck with me as I glanced at Lisa, sitting beside me. She held my hand, squeezing it, her face pale and worried. "I'll be here for you," she whispered. "We'll get through this together." Her words should have reassured me, but something about the way she said them felt off. I shook the feeling away, blaming my exhaustion and the shock of my diagnosis. The following weeks were a blur of medications, doctor visits, and overwhelming fatigue. I had to take a leave from work, something I never thought I would do. Lisa took over handling most things, paying bills, grocery shopping, and taking care of the house. At first, I was grateful, but soon, I started noticing changes. She began spending more time away from home. She claimed it was stress relief, saying she needed time to herself, which I understood. Caring for a sick spouse wasn't easy. But then she stopped answering my calls while she was out, returning home later and later. She didn't seem as affectionate anymore. She no longer cuddled up to me at night or stroked my hair when I was in pain. Her phone, which used to sit on the kitchen counter charging, was now always in her pocket or face down when she was home. Still, I pushed these thoughts aside. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Then, one night, I woke up around 2 a.m. in desperate need of water. My throat was dry, my body aching as I slowly sat up. The other side of the bed was empty. The bathroom door was open, the light off. Lisa wasn't there. A strange sense of unease washed over me as I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. That's when I saw it. Lisa was online. The message status on our last text showed she hadn't read it, even though she was clearly awake. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but something deep in my gut told me something was very, very wrong. I decided not to ask her about it right away. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was just feeling insecure because of my illness. But then came the night she didn't come home. I had texted and called her multiple times with no response. My mind raced with worst-case scenarios. Was she in an accident? Was she hurt? But when she finally walked through the door at 4 a.m., her makeup slightly smudged, her hair disheveled, my heart sank. "Where have you been?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Lisa barely looked at me as she slipped off her heels. "Out with friends. I told you I needed a break." "For 8 hours?" I asked, my voice sharper than intended. She sighed, rubbing her temple. "Mark, I'm exhausted. Can we talk about this later?" I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust her. But as she climbed into bed, turning her back to me, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know how deep the betrayal ran yet. The night Lisa came home at 4 a.m., I barely slept. Every possible thought raced through my mind. Was she really just out with friends? Was I overthinking everything because of my illness? Or was there something more sinister happening behind my back? The next morning, Lisa acted as if nothing had happened. She moved around the house, making coffee, scrolling through her phone, and giving me casual smiles as if she hadn't just walked through the door in the middle of the night. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust that she wouldn't betray me, not when I was at my weakest. But I couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in my gut. That was the moment I decided I needed proof. Since my illness made it difficult to leave the house, I had to get creative. I started by paying attention to the small details, things that seemed off but didn't scream infidelity on their own. Lisa was always on her phone, But when I entered the room, she locked the screen instantly. She started wearing perfume at odd times, even when she was supposedly just going to the grocery store. Her mood swings were unpredictable. Some days she was sweet and caring, other days she was distant and irritable. She started working late, even though she had never mentioned extra projects before. At first, I thought I was being paranoid. Maybe she was just stressed from taking care of me. But the turning point came when I noticed something undeniable. Her car mileage didn't match the places she claimed to be going. One night, while she was asleep, I checked her car's trip meter. Earlier that day, she had told me she was running errands downtown, which should have only been 10 miles round trip. But the mileage showed an extra 40 miles unaccounted for. Where had she gone? I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I started keeping track, writing down her mileage, her destinations, and her excuses. The more I observed, the more I realized she was lying to me. One evening, I got a text from Ryan, one of my closest friends. Ryan, hey man, how are you holding up? Me, doing okay, I guess. Just taking it one day at a time. Ryan, listen, I don't know if I should be saying this, but I've seen Lisa around town a couple of times. She wasn't alone. My chest tightened. Me, what do you mean? Who was she with? Ryan, I didn't get a clear look, but it was the same guy both times. I thought it was odd since she told me she was visiting you at home. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Lisa had told Ryan she was with me, but she had clearly been somewhere else. With someone else. Instead of confronting her immediately, I played along, acting normal while digging deeper into her deception. The next time Lisa said she was going out with friends, I checked the Find My Phone app on my iPad. Normally, she kept her location private, but she must have forgotten to disable it this time. Her location popped up on the screen. She wasn't at a restaurant. She wasn't downtown. She was at a hotel on the outskirts of the city. A deep rage bubbled inside me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I needed more than just a location. I needed undeniable proof. I knew I couldn't physically follow her in my condition, so I decided to gather evidence remotely. 1. I installed a small voice recorder inside her car. It activated whenever the car was in motion, recording everything she said. 2. I placed a second recording device in our bedroom, hidden inside a decorative plant. 3. I used an old phone as a secret camera, propping it up behind books on the living room shelf where she often made phone calls. Then I waited. It didn't take long. That Friday, she got all dressed up, sprayed on her expensive perfume, and told me she was meeting her friend Amanda for drinks. As soon as she left, I opened the tracking app. She wasn't heading to Amanda's. She was going back to the hotel. I clenched my fists but stayed patient. I spent the night listening to the recordings from her car. That's when I heard his voice. Lisa and the mystery man had laughed together, her giggles sickeningly sweet. Then came the part that shattered any remaining doubt. Lisa, I feel guilty sometimes, you know? Mark is so sick. Man, babe, he's practically useless now. You need someone who can actually satisfy you. Lisa, you're right. I just wish he'd disappear. Then I wouldn't have to sneak around anymore. I felt like my heart had stopped. This wasn't just cheating. She was wishing I was gone, acting as if my suffering was an inconvenience to her affair. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to confront her immediately. But I knew I needed more. So I waited. I reached out to Ryan. Me, I need your help. Ryan, name it. I explained everything, what I had found, the recordings, the location. Ryan didn't hesitate. Ryan, we're catching her in the act. That Saturday, Lisa told me she had an all-day work event. I nodded, pretending to believe her. As soon as she left, Ryan and I headed to the hotel. Ryan, being a tech guy, had a hidden camera pen and a small mic. We walked inside, acting casual, and spotted Lisa at the bar. She was laughing, touching the arm of a man I recognized immediately, Jason, her coworker. I had met Jason before. He had shaken my hand, smiled at me, and acted like my friend. Now he was sitting there, his hand on my wife's thigh, whispering in her ear as she laughed. Ryan discreetly recorded everything. Then, just as Lisa leaned in to kiss Jason, I stepped forward. Having fun, I asked, my voice calm but ice cold. Lisa froze, her face draining of color. Jason's hand jerked back, his eyes wide. Mark, what are you doing here? She stammered. I pulled out my phone and pressed play, letting her own voice expose her. Lisa, recording, you're right. I just wish he'd disappear. Her eyes widened in horror as people around us turned to stare. Jason's jaw clenched as he realized just how deep they were caught. "Enjoy your night," I said, turning my back on her for the last time. Lisa reached out, grabbing my arm. "Wait, Mark, please." I yanked my arm away. "We're done." As I walked away, I heard whispers from the other patrons. People had seen everything. Her true colors were now on full display for everyone to see. Lisa's face was a mask of pure panic. People at the bar were staring, whispering among themselves, while Jason sat frozen, his hand still resting where Lisa's thigh had been. I didn't wait for her to recover. I had seen enough, heard enough. I turned and walked away. But Lisa wasn't about to let me go that easily. She scrambled off her bar stool, rushing after me. "Mark, please wait." I kept walking, but she grabbed my arm, desperation clear in her voice. "It's not what you think," she blurted out. I slowly turned to face her. "Oh, so you weren't sneaking around? You didn't lie to my face while I was sick in bed? That wasn't your voice on the recording, wishing I would just disappear?" Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. She had no excuse. She had been caught red-handed, and she knew it. Jason finally snapped out of his shock, standing up. "Look, man, this isn't the place." "Shut up," I cut him off coldly. "You were in my home. You shook my hand. You pretended to be my friend while you were screwing my wife." He had nothing to say to that. Lisa turned on him instantly, her voice turning sharp. "You said no one would ever find out." Jason scoffed, stepping away from her. "That was before your dumb ass got caught." I almost laughed. How fast loyalty crumbled when the truth came out. Lisa turned back to me, her expression shifting from guilt to pleading. "Mark, I swear it was a mistake. I love you." You don't get to say that," I interrupted, my voice low and deadly serious. "You don't get to pretend that what you did was just a mistake. You made a choice, over and over again, and now you have to live with it." Her lower lip trembled. She hated losing control of the situation. The bar had gone silent, people pretending not to watch but unable to look away. Lisa realized it too. That's when she snapped. Her voice turned angry, desperate. "You want to act like a victim? Like you've been some perfect husband? Newsflash, Mark, you were weak. You spent months lying around, sick, useless. I needed someone who could actually be there for me." The words hit me like a slap, but I didn't let it show. I just stared at her. "Wow," I said quietly. "You really just said that." Jason, standing off to the side, winced. Even he knew she had just destroyed herself. Ryan, who had been silently recording everything, shook his head. "You're a real piece of work, Lisa." Lisa immediately realized her mistake. She reached for me again. "Mark, I didn't mean." I stepped back. "I don't care what you meant. I'm done." She panicked again, her voice rising. "No, we can fix this. You need me. Who's going to take care of you?" I smirked. "Not you." And with that, I walked away. She didn't follow this time. Ryan and I left the hotel, my hands still shaking from the adrenaline rush. "You good?" Ryan asked as we reached his car. I exhaled slowly, staring at the night sky. "Yeah, I think I am." But the battle wasn't over yet. I had one more move to make. I pulled out my phone and sent the recordings and video footage to 3 key people. 1, Lisa's boss. She had been lying about late work meetings. I figured he should know what was really going on. 2, Jason's wife. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention? Jason was married. 3, Lisa's family. Her parents had always seen me as the perfect son-in-law. Let's see what they thought now. Lisa had humiliated me in the worst possible way. Now, she was about to face the consequences. The next 48 hours were chaos. Jason's wife, Emily, went ballistic. She threw his belongings out on the lawn and filed for divorce the next morning. Lisa's boss fired her immediately. Turns out, Lisa had been using work trips as excuses to meet Jason at hotels. Her parents? Mortified. They called me, apologizing over and over, ashamed of their daughter's actions. Lisa, on the other hand, was desperate. She called me 20 times that night. "Lisa, please, Mark, don't do this. We can work through this." "Lisa, it didn't mean anything. I was just lonely." "Lisa, where am I supposed to go? I lost my job. My friends won't talk to me. Please, I need you." I didn't answer a single call. She had made her choice. Now, she had to live with it. In the aftermath of that fateful night, the reverberations of Lisa's betrayal spread far beyond the walls of that hotel bar. As the dust began to settle, I found myself forced to confront a reality I had never truly imagined. The initial shock and searing pain of the confrontation gradually gave way to a more measured, albeit still bitter, reflection on everything that had transpired. For days, I lived in a state of suspended disbelief. Every morning, I would wake up in our once shared home, now heavy with silence and a palpable sense of loss. The bed, which had once been a sanctuary of comfort and shared whispers, now seemed like a cold, empty space where memories of trust lay shattered. I spent long hours sitting at the kitchen table, mechanically sipping coffee as I replayed every moment of that night over and over in my head. I had no doubt that I was right all along. Every subtle lie and every whispered excuse had led to this moment. And now, with the evidence out in the open, the world around me was beginning to change. The ripple effects of the exposure were immediate and ruthless. Lisa's reputation crumbled in ways that were both swift and merciless. Friends who had once called her a kind and dependable person now looked at her with eyes full of pity and condemnation. Invitations to social gatherings ceased, and even those who had once spoken kindly to her now kept their distance. It wasn't long before local gossip transformed her story into a cautionary tale, a vivid example of betrayal and deceit. At work, the consequences were equally severe. Her boss, having received the evidence along with a detailed timeline of her deceptions, terminated her employment without a second thought. The office, once abuzz with cheerful chatter, now buzzed with whispered rumors and sympathetic glances in my direction. Some colleagues, perhaps feeling a mix of regret and vindication, approached me with apologies for not believing my earlier suspicions. Others merely avoided eye contact, as if the very sight of me was a reminder of their own complicity in having turned a blind eye. I, too, was forced to reckon with the internal consequences of this ordeal. The man I had been, strong, steadfast, and invincible in my own mind, had been reduced to a shell, suffering not only from a debilitating illness, but also from the betrayal of someone I had trusted above all else. Yet, amidst the chaos, there was a strange clarity that emerged. With each passing day, as I navigated the storm of public humiliation and private grief, I began to rebuild the fractured parts of myself. Therapy became a crucial part of my healing process. I reluctantly sought the help of a counselor, someone who could help me untangle the complex web of emotions that now defined my existence. In our sessions, I confronted not just the sting of betrayal, but also the guilt that I had, in some ways, contributed to my own isolation. I had ignored the warning signs, dismissed the small inconsistencies that now seemed so glaring in hindsight. My counselor helped me see that vulnerability was not a weakness. Rather, it was the very essence of being human. And it was this vulnerability that allowed me to truly feel, and eventually, to heal. As I slowly began to reclaim my strength, the community around me played an unexpected role in my journey toward recovery. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers reached out with words of encouragement and support. I was invited to join a support group for people who had experienced betrayal, where stories of heartbreak mingled with tales of resilience. In these meetings, I discovered that I was not alone. Many had endured similar betrayals and emerged stronger, more determined to embrace life despite its inherent uncertainties. These interactions, though painful, served as a constant reminder that even in our darkest moments, there is light, and sometimes, that light is found in the shared vulnerability of others. Lisa, on the other hand, was left to confront the consequences of her choices in isolation. As the days turned into weeks, she found herself ostracized by the very people who had once celebrated her. Social media became an unforgiving public forum where her actions were dissected and discussed without mercy. In a desperate bid to salvage what little remained of her reputation, she attempted to issue apologies, to downplay her involvement, and even to claim that her actions were the result of loneliness and desperation. But every public statement was met with skepticism, every attempt at redemption undermined by the overwhelming evidence of her betrayal. One particularly poignant moment came when her estranged parents paid her a visit. The confrontation was raw and unfiltered. Years of pride and familial love clashed with the stark reality of her actions. I wasn't there for that meeting, but later, I received a call from her mother, her voice trembling with a mixture of sorrow and anger. "We never thought our daughter was capable of such cruelty," she confessed, her words hanging heavy in the silence on the other end of the line. It was a moment of reckoning not just for Lisa, but for everyone who had placed their trust in her. In the midst of these cascading consequences, I began to find a semblance of peace. With the betrayal now an open secret, there was no more room for uncertainty or the constant gnawing suspicion that had tormented me. Instead, I embraced the truth, however painful it was, and started to focus on what lay ahead. I reconnected with old friends and revisited hobbies that had been relegated to the background during the tumult of my illness. Slowly, I began to rediscover the parts of myself that had been buried under layers of hurt and betrayal. I also realized that the process of healing was not a solitary endeavor. The support of those around me, the people who, despite everything, chose to stand by me, became the bedrock of my recovery. Their unwavering faith in me, even when I struggled to believe in myself, was a powerful reminder that I was more than the sum of my pain. It was through these interactions that I learned to forgive not for Lisa's sake, but for my own liberation. Even as I rebuilt my life, the memory of that dark period remained, a scar etched into my heart that would never fully fade. Yet, it served as a constant reminder of my journey, of the strength I had discovered in the face of overwhelming adversity. I started writing down my experiences, turning my heartbreak into words, and sharing my story with others who were on similar paths. In doing so, I transformed my personal tragedy into a beacon of hope for those who had also suffered the sting of betrayal. As I sat in the quiet of my living room one evening, watching the sunset cast long shadows across the floor, I felt an unfamiliar sense of resolve. I knew that the path ahead would not be free of pain or regret, but I was ready to face it with a newfound courage. The chapter of Lisa's betrayal was closing, and a new one was beginning. A chapter defined not by weakness or despair, but by resilience, self-discovery, and the relentless pursuit of a life rebuilt on the foundations of truth and self-respect. In that moment, I made a promise to myself to never let the actions of others define my worth, and to always stand strong, even when the world seemed intent on breaking me down. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, I was truly ready to move forward. The weeks turned into months, and life slowly began to regain a sense of normalcy. Though the pain of betrayal still lingered, I found that each passing day lessened its grip on my heart. Healing wasn't a linear process, but I had made a decision. I would not allow Lisa's actions to define the rest of my life. The divorce proceedings had been surprisingly swift. Given the overwhelming evidence against Lisa, my lawyer had ensured that I received a favorable settlement. The house, which once held the echoes of shared laughter and whispered dreams, was now legally mine. But despite winning that battle, I found no real joy in possessing the walls that had borne witness to my deepest heartbreak. So I sold it. Letting go of that house was symbolic. It wasn't just a transaction, it was the closing of a chapter, the release of a past that no longer served me. The moment the sale was finalized, I felt a weight lift from my chest. I packed my belongings, took a deep breath, and stepped into the unknown, ready to start fresh. Lisa, on the other hand, wasn't faring nearly as well. After losing her job and being ostracized by her social circle, she struggled to piece her life back together. The whispers that followed her everywhere served as a constant reminder of what she had done. Even those who had initially sympathized with her grew distant as the full extent of her betrayal became common knowledge. Her affair partner, Derek, had turned his back on her the moment the scandal broke. He was married, and his wife had not only divorced him but also taken him to court for everything he had. His once carefree life had crumbled under the weight of his own mistakes. He tried to reach out to Lisa a few times, perhaps hoping for solace in shared misery, but she wanted nothing to do with him. Their so-called love had been nothing more than an illusion, one that shattered the moment real consequences entered the picture. One day, Lisa called me. Seeing her name flash on my phone sent a strange shiver down my spine. For a moment, I debated ignoring it, letting her voice slip into the void unanswered. But then I pressed the button and placed the phone to my ear. "Hello." My voice was steady, devoid of the emotion she had once been able to stir so easily. There was a pause, followed by a shaky exhale. I. I just wanted to talk. I said nothing, waiting. She took it as an invitation to continue. I've lost everything, you know. My job, my friends, my reputation. Even my parents barely speak to me anymore. Her voice wavered, thick with regret. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone a little tighter. And what do you expect me to say, Lisa? That I feel sorry for you? That I regret exposing the truth? No, she whispered. I just wish things had been different. I made a terrible mistake, and I can't take it back. I know you hate me, and I don't blame you. But I never stopped loving you, even when I was at my worst. I need you to know that. I let out a slow breath. There was a time when those words would have broken me, when they would have made me second-guess everything. But now, they were nothing more than echoes of a past I no longer belonged to. I don't hate you, Lisa, I finally said. I did for a while. But now, I just don't care anymore. What you did changed everything. And no matter how much you regret it, it doesn't change the fact that you made a choice. You threw away everything we had, and for what? A fleeting thrill. She sobbed quietly on the other end of the line. I was stupid, selfish, and now I have to live with it. Yes, you do, I agreed. Just like I had to live with the pain you caused. But unlike you, I chose to move forward. She sniffled, composing herself. Are you happy? That question caught me off guard. For a long time, happiness had felt like an impossibility, something just out of reach. But now, standing in my new apartment, with a future that was no longer tied to the past, I realized something. I'm getting there, I admitted. And that's enough for me. She let out a shaky breath. I really did love you, you know. Even if I didn't deserve you. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Goodbye, Lisa. I hung up. And just like that, the last thread that bound me to her was severed. With the past finally behind me, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I started traveling again, something I hadn't done since before my illness. I took up photography, capturing moments that reminded me of the beauty in the world. I even started dating, though I took things slow, allowing myself the time to truly heal. More than anything, I learned to enjoy my own company, to find peace in solitude rather than fear it. One evening, while sitting at a quiet cafe, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I found myself smiling, genuinely, effortlessly. It was in that moment that I realized I was finally free, not just from Lisa, but from the pain, the betrayal, the anger. I was free to live, to love, to embrace whatever the future held. And that was all I had ever needed.